Welcome to the Chargers TV podcast version. I'm Ron Riggs. On today's edition, myself and Justin Bryan, we speak about COVID-19 and the impact that has had on the NBL 1 and forcing cancellation of the 2020 season. We speak about the teams and what could have been. We go in depth on what Stewie and Nashi had for both men's and women's teams respectively. And where to from here, we dwell in that as well, and a whole lot more here on Chargers TV. Time to welcome in Justin Bryan, who is in what? You in semi-isolation, JB? Well, what's your movements, mate?
We're just sort of being safe, Ronnie. We're living in a student hostel and having a high flux of coming and going within our hostel community with students and staff. It's just a little more practical for those of us that can stay home to stay home. I was one of the ones unfortunately affected and sacked by Mr. Morrison on Sunday night from my RSL job, and having had the announcement of the NBL 1 not going forward this season, that's limited me to, my work here at the hostel, so I may as well make the most of it and stay put here for the time being. And we can practice our social distancing. We normally do Chargers TV, but we'll do Chargers PC for the time being, Ron.
Yeah, podcast type version of the show. We will cut to some clips as well too. We're going to take some grabs from some of the press conferences that are up on the YouTube page. But to everyone that is listening, stay safe. Make sure you do the right thing. Only go out when it's essential to do so. And yes, social distancing is a must. Hence why we're doing the show for a phone hookup here. I'm at home and have all the equipment here, and JB at the hostel there. Let's talk about COVID-19, JB, because it's been a very hot topic around not only for basketball but for sports in general, and we're seeing a lot of suspensions, and now we're starting to see cancellations, and that, of course, beginning with NBL 1 that cancelled their league back on Tuesday.
Yeah, well, I think it was the safest move they could make, Ronald. It wasn't one of those can we or can't we, should we wait it out, should we hold off? I mean, based on the information that was provided to us on Sunday and based on the extra information that was then provided to us from the premiers of the states that will be affected in, your Queensland, your New South Wales, your South Australia, your Victoria, and obviously us here in Tassie. It was the only decision to make, and I think that was well outlined in our media conference the last couple of days from Brett McKay, our president, and certainly from the head coaches in Mark Nash and Anthony Stewart. I mean, we're at a stage now, Ron, particularly with a fast spread and just how far wide it is and just how many people are being impacted on it. I mean, Tassie's currently at a rate now, particularly over the last 5-6 days, where we've been getting our numbers increase, by half a dozen or 8 people, which really, it doesn't seem like much, but when you impact the fact that they've probably talked to a different person who's then talked to different people who's talked to different people, the spread's bound to happen. I mean, can you imagine us being locked down in a stadium, particularly out at Creek Road there? We can pack nearly 1,100 people in. Who's to say that, just on a small percentage, say half a dozen of them in there have it and don't know? Well, all of a sudden you could have that whole 1,100 people by the time they pass by, and through players and interactions and stuff like that, and just touching services. What's to say that all of us, the 1,100 in that building, then don't get it? Well, that's a large percentage of the Hobart population to get it, who would then impact the other percentage of the population. So it's had far-drawing impacts. I mean, the NBL 1 is major, and I think it's more than COVID-19, particularly for the Chargers, Ronnie. I mean, you've only got to see how much work has been put in over the last 6 to 9 months to get this club back on its feet and get going, get the ball rolling. Hobart Chargers basketball is the number one brand of basketball here in the south of the state, and you could argue as the only male-female combined club, it's probably the leading brand of basketball here in Tasmania. So having had 12 months off, coming fresh into NBL 1 here in 2020, wanting to rebuild the brand and everything, all of a sudden to just have that big kick in the guts, it's certainly going to be a setback. There's certainly a lot of players it's impacted. It's impacted the coaches. It's impacted the board, who, again, waited out a very hard 12 months to get back on the floor. They're not able to do that now, unfortunately, but we do have the hindsight of knowing that everyone's going to be safe and that we're going to be better in the long run for this. And hey, we've survived 12 months. There's another 12 months coming up. There's no doubt that the club has got plans in place for players, coaches, the board and the brand itself to continue to build, continue to strengthen and come back bigger and better in 2021.
Absolutely, JB. And we're going to put up the statement. So obviously this thing will go, this podcast version of the show will go up on YouTube. So we're going to flash up the statement made by the Hobart Chargers back on Tuesday. I'm not going to read it all. I'm not going to read it out, but I'll read some portion of it here. Just saying the board would like to thank all of our players, coaches and officials for the work they have put into the preparation of the season. We would also like to thank all our sponsors, members and supporters for their ongoing support to get the Chargers ready to take to the court for 2020. It goes on to say here, we'd also like to thank the Launceston Tornadoes and Northwest Thunder for their support and the solidarity with the Chargers during this uncertain time. The relationship between the three clubs has only become stronger as a result of these unfolding events. Now, let's just touch on that point there a little bit, JB. It's not often that the three NBL 1 clubs now do come together in these type of times and work together to make the right decision for the benefit of basketball. So just your take on what President Brett McKay has done to get the other two NBL 1 clubs on side.
Well, again, I think this is reflective of just how, from a selfish point of view, I think this is just reflective of just how much of a leader the Hobart Chargers are when it comes to basketball in Tasmania. But I think the credit has to go to the state itself in understanding that we were in a pretty unique situation in how we were able to shut our borders down. Essentially, we've got a moat and we're not afraid to use it sort of thing. I just think it was smart. The clubs have to collaborate, particularly now that we're working. There's a much more solid foundation and relationship across the board in Tasmania. It's not going to be, the Thunder get this and the Chargers get that, but the Tawns concede this, blah, blah, blah. We need to work as a state if we want to stay in this as a state. And I think that the understanding, particularly from Brett and certainly from the leadership of the other two clubs, is that, if we're not in it together and we're trying to compete in essentially a mainland competition where if they said, we're just going to cut you off, sorry, you're not going to be in it, then it's no great loss to them because they can go and find three clubs in a metropolitan Melbourne or in a rural capital, as you can see in a Geelong and a Ballarat, in your Dandenongs, etc. like that. It's a bit different for them, whereas for us, we've got to fight tooth and nail to stay in our competition. We've got to fight tooth and nail to get as much of an advantage as those clubs who are around the NBL 1 Central and around League Central get as far as their advantages. So it's been good that we've been able to come together as a group and be able to form this partnership as far as state basketball is concerned, and again, being able to build upon that relationship with Basketball Tasmania as well, because they're, being the state body, if they don't sign off on us being in the league, we can't really be in it. So, we've been able to build relationships across the board, not only with the clubs, but certainly with the state body as well. And I think that's only been of benefit. And a crisis time like this is probably a good time for us to really come together and sort crap out as well, which is essentially what they've done. And I think, again, if we can remember that this is really the low light for Tassie basketball. Chargers had their lows in, 2018. That's been and gone in the past. The Thunder and Tawns were able to maintain where they are now. But seeing as the whole state and every team, is in the same boat here, we need to just put every single difference aside. We need to divide that cascade. We need to get rid of the Cascade Bogues divide line there and just understand, look, we're all in this together. We're all in the same position. We need to build and work as one to get through this and continue on.
Absolutely, JB. And of course, NBL 1 did come out with a statement as well too. We'll pop that up on the screen as well too. And again, I'll just read just a couple of points here. NBL Chief Operating Officer Andy Crook had said, and I quote, "Obviously this is an unfortunate but the most appropriate decision under the current circumstances. The health and the safety of the players, staff and officials, as well as a wider community comes first. We also want to allow the clubs to focus on re-establishing grassroots basketball as a matter of priority when the time is right." Now, just on that last point that they've made there, JB, that once this COVID-19 kind of goes and we get the all clear from government and whatnot, do we really expect the Chargers to hit the floor running as far as getting back in the community and start running clinics, etc.?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, but it's going to depend on when this announcement comes, because I think if we're out of season, I think there's going to have to be a lot more advertisement and promotion, not so much the physical standpoint of clinics, because once sort of we get out of season in the NBL 1, we're already winding down our season as far as local competitions. The NWBU is all but done by August, September. Locally here in Hobart, SBL is all but done, and we're getting ready to head into State League a month or two after that. So I would suggest that depending on when the announcement comes will depend on how physically active the club will be. But in saying that, school programs will certainly be of high priority. You're going to be getting better weather coming onto that side of things. You'll be out of winter. They'll be able to get kids outdoors and get kids active. So I think from a school standpoint, that is plausible, but I wouldn't be surprised that it'll be dependent on when the league comes back. Now, if we were to come back, there's a ban that's lifted, say the ban's lifted in, your May, your June, you're pretty much in the middle of peak season, you're in the middle of school basketball season, you're around the school championship sort of mark there, in coinciding with what was happening, with the BTAS situation as well. If they're able to go back in, then you'll have things like the Tri-Series and et cetera coming back up as well. So if all of that sort of stuff starts going ahead, then I can see the Chargers getting into it. However, I will not be surprised if they sort of hold things off from a clinic and physical standpoint until there's a resurgence in other clubs doing, not other clubs doing other things, but other leagues and other associations doing things, and sort of the Chargers going with that. Because although we are a leader, we do want to be very careful and not overstepping our mark and understanding where things are as well. So I think it's going to be a timing thing. If it's towards the back half of the season, I think they'll wait until things like the state league start to get involved. But I think if it's smack bang in the middle of the season, I think they'll jump right ahead.
All right, let's cut to some vision now, finally, and we're going to take a few grabs from the press conference that happened on Tuesday. You'll hear from Brett McKay, Mark Nash and Anthony Stewart.
Look, I just think they had to do their due diligence properly first. And from there, they've only had the one call. Now that stage 1 restrictions actually have come into full force, they were left with no alternative. And as you say, yes, I've had chances and been prepared for it, but it's still, standing here today and saying it, is a lot different to conversations that I've had in the past. It really is a lot more gut-wrenching and emotional than what I thought it would be to be standing here.
How are you feeling standing here right now, mate?
Oh, pretty disappointed. In particular with the group we had established and put together. We were about to make a couple of massive announcements in Harry Froling and Craig Moller both signed. So I thought we had a squad that potentially could win the championship. I was pretty confident that not only to an exciting brand of basketball, but also win a lot of games and potentially take out the championship this year. So that's a little bit disappointing, but there's a lot of other things at play right now that we need to be thinking about. And I think for the club at the moment is probably a strong focus on the community program and making sure we continue to get that support from junior level.
Yeah, it's really strange, everything that's happening external to the club, but it's right across our communities, right across our country and globally. So it really does put sport in perspective. Certainly disappointing, and I've been around teams that have folded due to other circumstances, but this is definitely quite unique. So our focus right now is working through what this means with our players, with their local players, Kathleen Shear, who's already here, and players like Shyla Hill, who was preparing to travel to Hobart. So right now our focus is on the players for the next couple of days.
The thoughts there from Brett McKay, Mark Nash and Anthony Stewart. And when we spoke to Nashy and Stewie, JB, obviously the teams they had were looking like really, really good potential teams that were going to make top 8, if not top 4, and really try to make a run of it of what could have been, JB.
Oh, very much so. As as I said in our crystal ball, I think that our women's team was going to be fighting out in the lower half there of the top 8 for NBL 1. And I think a big factor there for me was the amount of local talent that we had, but young local talent, those that are just sort of really starting to get that extra experience at that NBL 1 level. But I must say, at the absolute top of the pile, we had one of the better looking lists across the league for that was sort of, particularly because we're a market that doesn't attract a great amount of WNBL talent. We were looking very, very promising. I mean, at the point guard there, you'd have been running with a Shyla Hill. I don't think there would be any question about that. We're talking about someone who's going to be a top 15, top 20 WNBA prospect here. We're talking about one of the best young talents across the planet. And she was looking to make her next step, and Hobart would have been would have been a tremendous spotlight for her. Not saying big fish in small ponds sort of thing, but she'd be the number one focus of a lot of teams and a lot of scouts and a lot of talent managers, etc. While she was playing down here. So a big opportunity missed by us, but I think a big opportunity that's going to be missed by Shyla as well, just to add that extra bit of spark and growth to her. To her prospects going forward. And again, we sort of got a feel for someone like a Shyla as well, who will no doubt be impacted by this travel ban internationally and interstate as well. I mean, she's right on the cusp of going to that elite next level and really making a name for herself, and certainly has that potential to pass up the name that her father made for himself when he had a cup of coffee over in the NBA, and certainly that well-established NBL career. Through the 2 and the 3, obviously we talk about the local talent and, the likes of a Shana Thompson and a Sarah O'Neill, girls like particularly Sarah, I'll touch on her quickly. She had a tremendous rookie year. I thought she was one of the unsung rookies of NBL 1. I believe she did win the Tornadoes Rookie of the Year, so that should tell you the sort of year that she had. They were a struggling side, but she was certainly a beacon of hope, and I think that was one of the great acquisitions that Mark made. Being able to put her alongside someone like a Shyla Hill this season would have been tremendous for her. A very underrated talent, and one would argue a misused talent occasionally throughout her career, so it would have been good to see her coming down to Hobart. Everyone in Hobart knows about Shana. I don't really need to say much there. Proven star, proven player, proven shooter, defence slowly improving. We always sort of have a joke with Shana about that, but when she puts her mind to it, she can be one of the best players on the floor. She started local season really well. She started at NWBU really well as well, so she was in form. She was fit. She was firing. She was turning up the training, and sometimes she was making training look effortless. I mean, we sat through on a couple of those, and it was just nothing for her to be, running around with. I know at one point there she was running around with a busted finger. She had a couple of injury niggles, but she wouldn't have shown it the way she was playing. And then our bigs, Taylor Roberts, come in. She was training really, really well, looking like a solid acquisition. Everyone knows Taylor's credentials. She's still young as well, and she's still got plenty of years and plenty of games under the belt. She was really starting to find some form, and having played with those girls as well, having played with the likes of a Sarah O'Neill and a Shana Thompson at local level, and certainly having that knowledge of a Shyla Hill would have helped her. And last but not least, the stalwart of the women's squad, Kathleen Shear, coming back down for, I think it was year 7, Ronnie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, year 7, Jobo.
It would have been her 7th year as a Charger. As I said, I think she should have an MVP under her belt in the old Siebel. She definitely had the DPOY in the old Siebel there. But Kathleen is a proven commodity. There's no doubt about that. And she treats Hobart much like a second home.
Absolutely.
Again, she was probably the face of the women's program from a community standpoint, from a basketball standpoint. Really don't really meet people that like Kathleen very often. As far as someone who's able to lead on the court, no doubt be the superstar, understand how pivotal her role is, but she's just as happy to go up to the 5-year-old and dribble a basketball post-game and get a photo with them. So, it's just unfortunate, particularly for Kathleen, who's travelled, internationally. She's come all the way over from the States to come over here and play. So she's had a major... she had to make a major decision to come over here. A lot of that was obviously before all the restrictions of COVID-19 and everything that's going on. But... I think, there's the big question there for a lot of people. Kathleen's, in that, 30 and above bracket now. How many more years does she have left wanting
That's right.
to travel over? But having spoken to Mark Nash, Ronnie, and we spoke to him off camera, the idea is to get Kathleen back for 2021. Not that it would be her swan song by any means. If she's able to get on the floor and still produce, she's got a licence to return as long as she wants, in my opinion. I certainly think in the opinion of most people as well. But, it's just disappointing when you look at the quality of talent that was in that women's starting five. You had good local talent coming off the bench as well. You had your Alex Finlaysons, you had your Eliza Vanderkamps, Taya Stevenson with an injury, but she was looking to get back into it as well. We also had Britt Parker coming off the bench as well. So, there are a lot of girls floating around really itching at the bit to have a go and really make the most of what was a deep and, very experienced, even though youthful, very experienced starting lineup. So you can see the disappointment in Coach Nash having to call the season. And as I said, just questioning Mark, the girls were really gelling at training. There was going to be a chemistry there. There was a fitness level that had raised because of local action coming in. So this team was really fit and firing, and hoping that once Shyla got here, we could really blend and get going, because obviously she's match fit. There's no doubt about it. But a very good squad. As I mentioned, I don't necessarily know how they could compete with a lot of the NBL, the top-tier WNBL clubs, players that were playing at other clubs. As we saw with the Opals list, over a dozen NBL 1 talent going onto the Opal squad for what has now been a rescheduled Olympics. So to tell you the amount of talent running around in this league, it's just unfortunate that we're not going to be able to take the floor, but certainly we're going to be more than competitive throughout the 2020 season.
Absolutely. Now, while you were giving that spiel and good analysis there, Brett McKay has this message through. Not that Brett McKay knows we're recording this, but breaking news. Brett McKay does want to front the Chargers TV cameras tomorrow. We're recording this on a Thursday, folks, so tomorrow being Friday, he wants one more appearance on Chargers TV. Hasn't revealed what he wants to speak about exactly, but Brett McKay will be fronting the cameras tomorrow here on Chargers TV. So breaking news there, JB.
There we go. Well, we'll definitely have we'll have the measuring tape out, we'll have the microphone stand, and no doubt a couple of hazmat suits as well. So,
absolutely.
And we joked about this during the week when we have caught up with Brett, but. He's been magnificent with the way he's been fronting the media over the last few weeks. We all jokes aside, Brett was not necessarily the most comfortable person in front of camera, and certainly over this week he's been in front of it 3 times, but and it'll be number 4 by the time we get to him on Friday. But he's been a tremendous front as well. Obviously, someone like David Bartlett, when he was president, has had multiple opportunities at staring at that red light and having the eyes light up. But no, Brett's been tremendous. And again, if he's wanting to front the media, it should give rest assurance not only to Chargers fans, but certainly basketball fans that, we are all over this and we are wanting to get you the information. It's not coming from a spokesperson. It's not just coming from me and Ronnie. It's coming from the top of the pile. So it'll be very interesting to see what Brett says tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. And what he's just replying while you speak. I've got the iPad set up here as well too, JB. We've got everything set up here in the Chargers TV studio, so let's
not give away the exclusive.
That's right.
Once just 10-4 me with it, we'll be fine. But
yes,
there'll be a Friday front up by Brett McKay. That's going to be very interesting.
Absolutely, it will be. He's just given us a time. I'm just going to see. If he can just reschedule half an hour earlier. While I do that, JB, let's move on to the men's team, because obviously Stewie had looked like he had a cracker of a team assembled with the potential he was going to announce Harry Froling and Craig Moller coming to the lineup.
Yes, well, can you imagine that combination? A former NBL Rookie of the Year. Craig has the championship experience in the NBL, and everyone knows his credentials here in Tasmania. And he's a pretty laid-back sort of guy, but he's intense. He's a competitor. Harry, having had a cup of tea here in Tasmania in the last 12 to 18 months as well. And there was a lot of other signings that have come along as well. As we mentioned, Christian Duralina was a signing that we'd had. We'd signed, obviously, we'd had the likes of a Terry Masunda that was going to play. We had a Jack Stanwich that was going to play. We had a Matty Young that was going to play. We even had, which didn't actually come to the forefront, but certainly we can reveal, had had put his name was QJ Peterson. He was
Yes.
spoken about by Coach Stewart. And again, like, you need to keep an eye on the fact that Anthony explained 5'11", so roughly around my height, Ronnie. I claim 6 foot, but probably closer to the 5'10" mark. So around my height and more athletic than Trey Nichols. And for those of you with a pretty good Chargers memory, Stewie compared his athleticism to that of championship player Chuck Long. And everyone knows just how exciting he was around the league and around the state.
Oh my
and
word,
he was
yes.
floating around as well. Tad Duffelmeyer, another
Yes.
big signing as well, proven point guard, 20-point per game player in the NBL 1, and he's had a few minutes in the NBL as well. And we had a lot of other young guys that were training with the squad that everyone will remember. You had your Noah Stratzmans, you had your Liam Smiths, you who else did we have running around?
Ambrose.
You had your Lockie Bouchers, you had your Geordie Hargraves, Elijah Pawsons. There were a lot of guys running around as well, and a lot of other younger players as well. Jordan Walker had been running around in the practice squad. Young Will Ferguson was also running around.
Yes.
In that one as well. So not only was it really a high calibre elite starting lineup with a very athletic, youthful and capable side in the reserves, but we also had some young, talented and keen practice players as well, such as the brand and the belief in this club at the moment. It's just sort of unfathomable. I sort of don't need to probably go into too many of the credentials of of what our starting 5 was going to be, but we were really going to run an experienced lineup through 7, have some really good athleticism and youth. Zach White, another stalwart of Tassie basketball at this point, was going to come into it as well, but it's just crazy to think that, after all that build-up, there's really not much that was going to happen. Really, there isn't anything that's going to happen this season. I mean, the men were really looking, again, being really competitive. There's a lot of good teams around this league, but the belief was with Anthony Stewart was that this team was going to be a top 4 competitor, and the championship was what he aims for. As he said, he doesn't like to lose, and I think we can back that up, whether it's on the basketball court, off the basketball court. I don't think, anyone except Anthony's ever had the last word at a press conference. Trust us, we keep the tapes rolling enough to know. But, it's just really disappointing, and there were some really quality people back on board the club as well. Matt Bennell had returned in an assistant coaching position as well. Now, our great mate, AOS, Glenn Fairfield, was down taking some training as well. So, you've got to remember, this doesn't just affect the players and the coaches either. You've got the people that are helping out at training. You've got obviously the board, but those that have been helping out at training over the last couple of months that have seen the progression of this squad. They've seen the signings, they've seen the development. They're the ones that have been, catching the rebounds and throwing the passes and strapping the ankles and bringing the lollies and keeping stats and keeping scores. They're the ones that are going to feel this just as much as well, because as much prep goes in off the court as it does on the court. So, while the men's team was looking really good, I mean, we were going to run 7 deep with a quality NBL 1 lineup before we even got into our reserves. So it's just unfortunate, Ronnie. But again, as Anthony Stewart, Mark Nash highlighted, and this is the key thing for Chargers fans to remember, is that what has been highlighted by these coaches and by the club is that almost all of these people are wanting to recommit to season 2021. And of course, we know the big carrot at the end of 2021 is potentially going to be rocking into an NBL side. Well, we were looking from a men's standpoint of having a starting 5 lineup that could play in the NBL.
Absolutely, and that could be, from what he was describing, as pretty much your bench for an NBL team.
Yeah, well, exactly right there. So, I mean, I'm just going to quickly take some notes here, but it should. Yeah. I think the big thing, Ronnie, and you can probably expand on it. You've been around the club a lot longer than me, and you've seen the progression from the dark days, so to speak, through to now. Just how much more of an appeal there is with Hobart basketball than there used to be, and what's really drawing this talent here.
Oh, absolutely, JB. I think watching the Chargers since 2005, the build over 15 years has been remarkable. From a small crowd of, say, 500, averaging on 500 in those early to late 2000s, to then getting packed houses, which were 1,100, I think 1,100 at Creek Road, and then we went into a bit of a downside. Obviously, 2014, 2015 were some Well, some lean years for the club, especially. I know being a referee in the league at that point and seeing how both teams were going. Obviously, the women had a bit of an upside, but the men had a bit of a downside. And then 2016, Stewie returns back. You got Dwayne Davey coaching the women's as well too. You have David Bartlett come into the fold as well too. And from there on in, everything's just gone up another level. And the popularity of this ball club and this brand now is second to none within Hobart. So it just goes to show a lot of people over many years have done a terrific job in making what the Chargers is today with the branding. And obviously this is a bit of a downer right now, and everything is beyond our control, and we understand that. But I have no doubt that the current board and our current president will do everything in its power, along with Stewie and Nashi, to keep this brand in topic for people to talk about and get everyone excited for 2021.
Exactly right. Just quickly, as I was going through there, just based off our signings, we, announced and unannounced, we had a squad that was running 8 deep just on signings, and that wasn't including some of the guys that were running around at training. So
that's right.
As we mentioned there, the top 5 of the women's squad there was an absolutely elite level squad with some very experienced players underneath coming through on the bench. But I mean, we were talking, Anthony Stewart had the luxury there, providing injuries and everyone being here on time, of being able to run an 8-man rotation at a minimum straight off the bat. So it should tell you the work that the club's put in, particularly considering a 12-month layoff and then having to come back come into the league essentially, get their licence, get their players signed and get everything sorted. It was going to be a very exciting year for Hobart basketball. Unfortunately, it isn't going to happen, but sometimes you've got to take the good with the bad, Ronnie, and I'm very sure, considering the acrimonious circumstances that the club's gone through over the last 5 years, that this is nothing but a hiccup in comparison and that we will be back.
Oh, absolutely, JB. And it kind of, we've kind of touched on already to where to from here. Obviously now with the break, and obviously we've obviously not a lot of things to do now. We kind of just have to sit tight, don't we, and just wait and see what the next move is, really.
Yes, well, as I said, I think the next move is going to be dependent on when we return. If it's end of season, then I think the focus is going to be to getting fitness and potentially encouraging a lot of these players to get into. Oh, geez, that's quite nice. I'll have to look at that. Sorry, I just had something pop up as far as Friday night footy with the lockouts and whatnot. But anyway, back to the subject.
Yeah, you're right.
The big thing for the club is going to be getting players into keeping players fit. Considering that if they can't train at home, they're really encouraged not to go out at all. And I think the big thing is going to be, and this is a statewide thing, this isn't just a Charge thing, this is a statewide thing. I think the encouragement needs to be from the board and certainly from the other clubs, and I think it will certainly come from Basketball Tasmania, is to get a lot of these elite level players into our state league if or when it goes ahead following the bans. Now, again, that's going to be a hot topic, and it's going to depend on lockouts and everything like that, depending on, because, again, if they've called the season for the NBL, if they're called season on NBL 1, then I really don't see, even if there was a potential in June to unlock everything or late May to unlock everything, there's really not enough time, especially from conferencing and seeding and regions, etc., to reorganise flight plans and games. But I think the big thing, particularly from a club standpoint, will be to encourage players to get back out there, get training, get amongst local competitions where you can, and most importantly, get into the state league, because that'll be the next elite level competition that a lot of these people can get into before pre-season next year. So again, it's all going to be dependent on the time frame. As I mentioned, if they come back mid-season, then if you can get local rosters going, get amongst that, get fit, avoid your injuries. If it's the end of the season and things lift, then look to get into your state league squads, look to get fit and go from there. And again, the club itself will organise and facilitate its branding and its brand management, and being in the community from there. Again, if they can get into schools and get out into the public spectre halfway through the season, they will. If not, I think they'll lead just on school clinics towards the end of term to sort of put that reminder out there. And really go from there. But I think there'll still be some media, there'll still be some advertising, there'll still be conversations with players and different things like that as well. And we'll try and really keep our media content up as well and keep the relevancy of the club up on our end. But I think from a club perspective, it's all going to be determined on the time frame of returning. I'm sure they're going to have things blocked out to, okay, what happens if they say we're back in a month, or we're back in 2 months, or we can return the financial, or we can return at the end. I think there's going to be building blocks put in place as to how far they go. What they are at this stage, we don't know. I mean, we had a cancelled season 48 hours ago, but I think they'd be the logical steps to take, Ronnie, and, seeing the common sense approach that our board has, I think they will be the steps they'll take.
There you go. All right. You can follow the Hobart Chargers on their social media. You can give them a like on Facebook. You can follow them on Twitter. You can give us a follow on Instagram too, where we've just did a bit of a throwback Thursday edition of some photos from 2012, JB. So there's some photos there of some familiar faces you may know or you might not heard of, or, did that person play for us in that year? So make sure you do follow the Hobart Chargers on our social media platforms, and of course you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, where we will try to keep you up to date the best way possible throughout the lockout, I'm calling it, and we'll try to get you news where we can. And as we mentioned already, we are going to speak with Brett McKay tomorrow on Friday, and get some final words from him. So that's where we end our podcast version of the show, JB. It's been a bit of a different experience doing this.
Very much a different experience, but I can't help but think you're missing one key thing that we've been meaning to mention, Ronnie.
That is, JB?
That would be that our new merch store
yes.
is live. Of all the sad and sorry stories that have come out of this cancellation, we have been informed and can inform you. We will make sure there is a link up once we get it. But the new merch store of the Hobart Chargers is live. So, a bit of a positive to end the week on.
Absolutely.
As well. Again, we will get a link out as soon as we can, but we have been informed that the new merch store is live. And again, there isn't a massive push on this for the simple fact that there is a lot of financial hardship out there at the moment with jobs. However, if you are feeling inclined to want to, help the club out during this time, support the club, and you're able to, then once this new merch store link is available, feel free to click on and go from there, Ronnie. But that's really the only positive that's come out of this, really, is that we now have a new merch store.
Absolutely. We got told on Tuesday that this merch store has gone live. And, of course, we got a bit of merch as well too, JB. We got the Chargers T-shirts, and they're very comfortable to wear.
They are beautiful T-shirts.
Yes, I don't have a price for them, unfortunately, but if we plugged the price. But
like good marketing, we can tell you the merch store's live. We're not here to tell you the price, but it is live, and we do encourage you, if you can afford to go and buy some merch. But no, it is good, and again, I think the Chargers are really wanting to, again, it's this rebranding essential of the club coming back in. Everyone would have seen the old shirts that me and Ronnie have rocked, and our hoodies that we've rocked as well. This now means a new merch store. I've got to get Dad something again. He's got one of the old hoodies. I'll have to get him a new one if there's a new one available. But, so if you can get on and support, it'd be great. Again, me and Ronnie can vouch for the merch at the moment. The shirts are lovely. They're light. They're an athletic shirt, so they're actually, what the players are really sort of wearing pre-game and stuff like that. So, it's not that thick, heavy cotton sort of stuff as well. So, I can't speak any higher of it, and it's probably my favourite T-shirt at the moment, just because of how comfortable it is running. So,
absolutely, JB. No, they're very comfortable indeed. So yes, get on that. We'll put a link in the description below, and make sure you check all that out. That will wrap us up here in this edition of Chargers TV and, podcast.
Chargers PC.
Oh, Chargers PC. Thank you very much, JB. Yes, Chargers PC. I'm not sure when the next time we'll come to you again, but do just stay tuned on our social media, and I'm sure we will get something out at some stage, JB.
Yeah, well, we're hoping to try, as we were speaking to our good friend Clint, who is now running the basically the media marketing sort of side of the club at the moment. He's been tremendous in a lot of what you've seen so far here in 2020, and he's been a great help to us, so shout out to Clint there. But having spoken to him, we're wanting to try and, keep the content up and keep the media up as much as we can. So, whether we try and, get some phone interviews with players, whether we, try to get an interview with some sponsors, members of the board, coaches, players, etc., We're going to try and get about and get involved as much as we can in what is going to be a very tight and restricted time frame. I think we're going to look back on this in the next 9-12 months and, we're just not going to be able to believe it, but we've just got to ride it through. And, we'll probably a few Throwback Thursdays as well. So not only will you get some modern content and just how the players are feeling at the moment, we'll certainly get some retrospectives going as well. A great history here at the Chargers, and we've got plenty of great resources for historic footage and historic images as well. So keep your eye out for that. But at the moment, the main focus is going to be the breaking exclusive that we're getting with President Brett McKay tomorrow. So we'll hold tight for that, Ronnie, and we'll see where we go from there.
All right. So on behalf of Justin Bryan, I'm Roy Riggs. This has been another edition, or the first edition of Chargers PC, and we'll speak to you soon.